Welcome to Worth Coin. And let me ask you something that could completely change the way you look at an old penny. What if a tiny copper coin that most people would ignore could actually be connected to a fortune so enormous that it sounds almost impossible? The 1955 wheat penny is already one of the most famous dates in American penny collecting, but when extraordinary condition, unusual characteristics, and the legendary 1955 double die story enter the picture, collectors suddenly stop looking at it like ordinary pocket change. Online claims have pushed sensational figures as high as $55 million for an extraordinary example. But before you believe a number like that, you need to understand exactly what makes a coin genuinely valuable, because the difference between an ordinary example and a truly exceptional rarity can be enormous. And stay with me all the way to the end, because while we're focusing on this famous wheat penny today, there are other coins waiting in our series that have their own secrets, and I'm not going to reveal their values yet. I'm only going to tell you that you will want to hear what makes them special. First, let's clear up one important detail. A 1955 Philadelphia wheat cent does not normally carry a P mint mark. So if you see this coin described online as a 1955 P wheat penny, collectors generally understand that the P is being used to identify Philadelphia rather than an actual mint mark stamped onto the coin. That little distinction matters because serious collectors don't judge a coin by an exciting headline alone. They examine the date, mint characteristics, die variety, condition, strike, surfaces, provenance, and authentication. Now let's talk about the sensational figure surrounding this coin. A value of $55 million is an extraordinary claimed figure, not a standard documented auction value for an ordinary 1955 wheat cent. In the real collecting world, famous varieties such as the 1955 double die obverse can command substantial premiums, especially in exceptional grades. But a viral number should never be confused with a verified auction record. That actually makes this story even more interesting, because it gives us the opportunity to separate internet hype from the genuine reasons collectors chase this coin. So imagine opening an old family coin jar, finding a wheat cent, and noticing the date 1955. At first, you might think, it's just an old penny. But then you look closer. The lettering seems strange. The date appears unusual. Some details seem doubled. The surfaces look remarkably sharp. Suddenly, the coin that looked ordinary a few seconds ago becomes something worth investigating. This is where the real excitement begins. The 1955 wheat cent was produced during an era when the United States Mint was striking enormous quantities of Lincoln cents for everyday commerce. The Lincoln cent itself had already become an American icon by this point. Designed by Victor David Brenner and first introduced in 1909, the wheat cent featured Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the familiar two wheat ears on the reverse. For decades, these pennies passed through American hands, traveled through cash registers, disappeared into drawers, landed in coin jars, and were eventually replaced by newer cents. But certain dates and varieties became especially desirable to collectors, and the 1955 issue became famous for one particular reason: the dramatic double die obverse variety. This is where collectors need to slow down and understand the difference between a genuine die variety and ordinary damage. A coin can appear doubled because of mechanical damage, striking issues, machine doubling, die deterioration, or other effects that are not equivalent to a true double die. The famous 1955 double die obverse is different because the doubling originates from the die-making process itself. On genuine examples, prominent areas such as the date and lettering can display unmistakable separation. That is why collectors don't simply hold a coin under a lamp and declare it rare. They compare diagnostic characteristics carefully. They study the date. They inspect the lettering. They examine Lincoln's portrait and the relationship between double design elements. They look for characteristics that match known examples. And when serious money is involved, authentication becomes essential. Now think about how exciting that is for someone searching through an inherited collection. You could have dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of old coins, and most might be ordinary. But one unusual variety can suddenly become the coin everyone in the room wants to examine. That's the emotional power of numismatics. It isn't simply about metal. It's about discovery. It's about history. It's about the possibility that something overlooked for decades could suddenly become important. The 1955 double die story has become legendary partly because examples entered circulation and were discovered by ordinary people. That is one reason collectors continue to search old wheat cents today. The idea that a significant variety could have escaped into everyday commerce creates a treasure hunt feeling that never really disappears. And here's something every beginner should remember. Rarity alone does not automatically create a giant value. A rare coin in poor condition can be worth dramatically less than a rare coin in outstanding condition. Collectors consider grade, surface quality, color, strike, eye appeal, variety, authenticity, and market demand. For Lincoln cents, grading can become incredibly detailed. A coin with original surfaces and strong design details can attract much more attention than one that has been cleaned, scratched, polished, corroded, or heavily worn. In fact, cleaning can hurt a collectible coin because collectors generally prefer original surfaces. So if you discover an old wheat cent that appears promising, don't grab a polishing cloth and try to make it shiny. That could permanently reduce its desirability. Instead, handle it carefully by the edges, avoid rubbing the surfaces, and have a potentially valuable variety professionally evaluated. Now let's imagine another scenario. Picture an old wooden box sitting in an attic. Inside are family keepsakes collected over generations. You open it and find a handful of wheat cents. Most have darkened surfaces. Some are worn. One has a sharper date than the others. Another seems to have unusual lettering. And then you notice the famous year associated with one of the most talked about Lincoln cent varieties. Your heart starts beating faster. Is it actually the variety? Is it simply machine doubling? Could it be damaged? Or could it be something genuinely important? That moment is what keeps collectors searching. The answer isn't always obvious, and that uncertainty is part of the fun. But let's discuss another major misconception surrounding the 1955 wheat cent. Not every coin dated 1955 is automatically rare. Millions of ordinary Lincoln cents from this era exist, and many examples are worth only modest amounts depending on condition. The extraordinary interest centers around specific varieties and exceptional specimens. This is why a headline saying 1955 penny worth millions can be misleading if it doesn't explain what characteristics make the coin special. If you have one, you need to identify exactly what you're looking at. Look at the date under magnification. Study the lettering. Compare the coin against trusted references. Pay attention to the overall condition. And most importantly, don't assume every unusual-looking mark is a mint error. Genuine mint errors and die varieties have specific characteristics, and specialists know how to distinguish them from post-mint damage. Another fascinating part of the story is the role of condition. Imagine two examples of the same variety. One has been circulating for decades. Its portrait is worn, the wheat lines are weak, and the surfaces are covered with scratches. The second has much sharper detail and dramatically better preservation. To a casual observer, they're both just old pennies. To a collector, they're completely different propositions. That's why professional grading services exist. A certified grade can provide an independent assessment of condition and authentication, although certification does not guarantee a particular selling price. Market conditions change, buyer demand changes, and exceptional coins can behave very differently from ordinary examples. Provenance can also add intrigue. A coin with a documented history, especially one connected to an important collection or significant discovery, can attract additional attention. Collectors love stories. They love knowing where a coin came from, who owned it, how it was discovered, and how it survived. A tiny cent can carry a surprisingly large human story. Perhaps it was saved by a parent. Perhaps it sat inside a bank envelope for decades. Perhaps someone received it in change and noticed something strange. Maybe it was tucked away and forgotten until a family member started searching through old possessions. These stories are part of what makes coin collecting more than a financial hobby. It connects ordinary people with history. Now, let's return to that sensational $55 million claim. If you encounter a headline declaring that a 1955 wheat penny is worth exactly $55 million, don't immediately believe it. Ask the most important question: where is the documented sale? Was the coin authenticated? What grade did it receive? Was it a recognized variety? Was the transaction public? Is there a reputable auction record supporting the number? Without those answers, the figure should be treated as an internet claim rather than an established market price. That's an important lesson for every collector watching this video, because exaggerated coin values spread quickly online. Sometimes an eye-catching number gets repeated so many times that people begin treating it as fact. But real numismatics requires evidence. The exciting part is that you don't need to believe a sensational number to appreciate why the 1955 wheat cent is important. Its historical significance and famous double die variety already make it one of the most recognizable Lincoln cent stories in American numismatics. And that means your search should focus on identification rather than fantasy. Check the date. Check the lettering. Check the doubling. Check the surfaces. Check the weight and dimensions when appropriate. Compare the coin with authenticated references. And if something truly unusual appears, seek an experienced numismatist or reputable grading service before making any claims about its value. Because one mistake can work against you. Selling too quickly can mean missing important information. Cleaning the coin can damage its original surfaces. And trusting an unverified online valuation can lead to unrealistic expectations. The smartest collectors don't chase a number first. They chase identification first. Value comes after the facts. So if you have a 1955 wheat cent somewhere in your collection, this is the moment to take another look. Don't just glance at it. Use good lighting. Use magnification. Look carefully at the date and lettering. Compare the design against reliable examples. If you believe you've discovered a genuine double die variety, don't celebrate by immediately putting a giant price tag on it. Document it, protect it, and have it authenticated. That is how serious collectors approach potentially important coins. And remember the suspense I mentioned at the beginning, because this is only the beginning of our journey. There are more coins in this series, and the next one has its own story that could make you question how many overlooked coins might be hiding in old collections, inherited jars, drawers, boxes, or forgotten albums. I'm deliberately not revealing the next coin's value, because I want you to understand the clues before you hear the number. Keep watching, because the next coin brings us into another fascinating chapter of American coin collecting, and its history may be far more interesting than its ordinary appearance suggests. Before we move on, tell me in the comments, have you ever found a wheat penny that looked unusual? Did you notice doubling, an odd date, strange lettering, or another characteristic that made you stop and take a second look? Share your experience, because one collector's discovery can help another collector learn what to watch for. And if you have a jar full of old pennies sitting somewhere at home, Don't assume they're worthless just because they're small and common looking. The lesson of the 1955 wheat cent is not that every old penny is a fortune. The lesson is that identification matters. History matters. Condition matters. Variety matters. And sometimes, the smallest details create the biggest difference. So take your time, look closely, and never let an exciting headline replace careful research. The legendary 1955 wheat cent remains one of the most fascinating chapters in Lincoln cent collecting, especially because of the famous double-die variety that transformed an ordinary-looking penny into a numismatic legend. And if you thought this coin story was surprising, remember that we're not finished yet. The next coin is waiting, and I'm keeping its value hidden for now, but its clues, history, and collector appeal may give you an entirely new reason to examine the coins you've been ignoring. So don't go anywhere, because the next chapter could be the one that makes you reach for your own coin jar and start searching all over again. Next coin, and this is where our search gets even more mysterious, because the next entry in our original sequence was described only as a United States coin associated with an extraordinary claimed value, without a specific year or denomination. Rather than inventing a year or pretending we know exactly which coin was intended, let's turn that missing detail into part of the mystery. Somewhere in the world of American coin collecting, there are coins whose stories become larger than their size, coins that pass quietly from hand to hand, while collectors search for tiny clues that most people would never notice. Imagine finding an old coin in a drawer, an inherited collection, or a forgotten box, and realizing that its appearance doesn't quite match the coins you've seen before. Maybe the lettering looks unusual, perhaps the design seems slightly shifted, or maybe the surfaces have survived in remarkable condition. The first instinct might be to search the internet and discover an enormous price attached to a similar-looking coin. But that's exactly where careful collectors slow down. A headline can create excitement, but identification creates knowledge, and knowledge is what separates a fascinating discovery from an ordinary piece of pocket change. This mystery entry is a perfect reminder of that principle. When collectors evaluate a potentially valuable United States coin, they begin with the basics: denomination, date, mint mark when applicable, metal composition, weight, diameter, edge, design type, condition, and any unusual characteristics. Then they ask the most important question of all: is the unusual feature actually something created at the mint, or did it happen after the coin entered circulation? That distinction can completely change the story. A genuine mint error or recognized die variety can attract serious collector interest, while scratches, dents, corrosion, cleaning, polishing, environmental damage, or ordinary machine doubling may have little or no premium. This is why a coin that looks strange under casual inspection deserves investigation rather than an immediate valuation. Think about the countless coins produced by the United States Mint over generations. They were designed to be used, spent, transported, dropped, saved, and eventually replaced. Most disappeared into everyday life without anyone recording their journeys. Yet a tiny number developed unusual characteristics during production, and some of those became famous among collectors. A planchet could have an unusual preparation issue. A die could contain a significant variety. A striking problem could create an off-center design. A wrong planchet could place a design onto a metal blank intended for another denomination. A doubled die could produce dramatic separation in letters or numbers. These possibilities are what transform coin collecting into a treasure hunt. But here's the suspense. The most valuable discovery is not always the coin with the most dramatic-looking damage. Sometimes the clue is incredibly subtle. A tiny separation in a letter, a peculiar shape around a digit, a specific relationship between design elements. a missing detail that should be present, a composition that doesn't match the normal issue. To an untrained eye, these differences can look meaningless. To an experienced numismatist, they can be the beginning of an investigation. And that is why collectors use magnification, reference books, specialist catalogs, auction archives, and professional authentication. The story of a potentially rare coin should never depend on a single photograph or an exaggerated social media claim. If a listing says a coin is worth an unbelievable amount, ask where that figure came from. Was there a documented auction? Was the coin certified? What was its grade? Was it a recognized variety? Was the price actually realized by a buyer, or is it simply an estimate repeated online? These questions protect collectors from one of the biggest problems in modern coin collecting: sensationalized valuations. A coin can be rare, fascinating, historically important, and highly collectible without being worth the spectacular number printed in a viral headline. And yet, that doesn't make the search any less exciting. In fact, it makes the search more authentic. You're not simply looking for a magical number. You're looking for evidence of something unusual. You're looking for the story hidden inside the metal. Imagine an old collection sitting untouched for 50 years. The original owner may have carefully saved coins that looked different, never realizing that one particular piece would eventually attract attention. A family member discovers the collection decades later. They spread the coins across a table and begin sorting them. Common coins go into one pile. Older coins go into another. Then one coin catches the light differently. Its details appear unusually sharp. The date looks interesting. The edge feels different. Suddenly, the sorting stops. The collector reaches for a magnifying glass. This is the moment every coin hunter dreams about, not necessarily because they know they've found a fortune, but because they know they've found something worth investigating. And while our original sequence doesn't give us enough information to identify this second coin precisely, the lesson applies to every potentially valuable coin you encounter. Never clean it. Never scrape it. Never polish it. Never alter the surfaces in an attempt to make it look more attractive. Original surfaces are important, and cleaning can permanently damage collector appeal. Instead, photograph both sides under good lighting. Record the weight and measurements if appropriate. Protect the coin in a suitable holder and compare it against reliable references. If the characteristics remain convincing, professional authentication can be the next step. Another major factor is condition. Two coins of the same type can have dramatically different levels of collector demand because preservation matters. A heavily worn coin may still be historically fascinating, while an exceptionally preserved specimen can become much more desirable. Collectors examine where on the highest points of the design, surface marks, luster, color where relevant, strike quality, and overall eye appeal. For some issues, the difference between grades can be enormous. This is why serious collectors often focus not only on finding the right date, but on finding the right combination of date, variety, condition, and originality. Now let's talk about the emotional side of this hobby. Why do people spend hours searching boxes of coins? Why do collectors examine thousands of ordinary pieces hoping to find one unusual example? Because discovery creates a feeling that ordinary shopping cannot reproduce. You're holding something that may have passed through countless hands before reaching you. You are connecting with a physical object that was created during another period of American history. Perhaps it bought a meal decades ago. Perhaps it sat in a cash register during an important historical moment. Perhaps someone saved it because they thought it looked unusual. Every coin has a journey, even when that journey is undocumented. And when a rare variety appears, the journey becomes part of the fascination. The best coin discoveries often begin with curiosity rather than expertise. Someone simply asks, "Why does this look different?" Then they start researching. They learn about mint marks. They learn about planchets and dies. They learn about doubling. They learn how to distinguish true varieties from post-mint damage. Before long, the person who once ignored old coins is examining every penny, nickel, dime, and quarter that comes through their hands. That's how collectors are made. And if you're watching this video because you have an old collection at home, don't make the mistake of searching only for the oldest coin. Age can matter, but age alone doesn't guarantee rarity. A relatively modern coin with a significant error or variety can. Sometimes attract much more attention than an older coin that was produced in enormous quantities. The key is understanding what makes the specific issue unusual. That's also why you should be cautious with claims that every coin of a certain year is worth a gigantic amount. In numismatics, a date is only the beginning of the identification process. Mint location, variety, grade, condition, and authenticity can completely change the result. So if you find a coin that appears to match an exciting online claim, don't stop at the headline. Investigate the actual diagnostics. Look at trusted references. Compare authenticated photographs. Search documented auction results. And if necessary, consult a professional. That approach may feel slower, but it is far more rewarding because you're learning how the hobby really works. And remember, the mysterious second entry in our original list is only one part of the larger journey. There are more coins coming, including another wheat penny that has a fascinating place in American numismatic history. I won't reveal the value attached to that next coin because the suspense is part of the journey, but I will tell you this. Its story takes us into another era of Lincoln cents, and the details collectors look for may surprise you. So keep your coin jar nearby, because the next discovery could be hiding in the exact place you stopped looking years ago. Before we move forward, take a moment and think about the oldest American coin you have ever found. Was it inherited? Did you discover it in circulation? Was it sitting in an old jar? Did someone tell you it might be valuable? Whatever the story, remember that the first step is always identification. Don't let an enormous number convince you that a coin is rare, and don't let an ordinary appearance convince you that it isn't. Examine the evidence. Learn the diagnostics. Protect the coin, and then let the market and professional authentication determine what it actually means. That's the difference between a viral coin story and real numismatic research. And now we're getting closer to another major chapter in this journey. The next clearly identified coin in our original sequence is another wheat penny, and this time the date itself is part of the mystery we need to investigate. It has survived decades of changing technology, changing collecting habits, and changing markets, and collectors continue to examine examples looking for the characteristics that separate ordinary pieces from exceptional ones. So don't leave yet, because the next coin brings us back to the Lincoln wheat cent, and its story could be the reason you start looking at every old penny in your collection with completely different eyes.